analog horror. For anybody who's been a part of this channel for any meaningful amount of time, you know I've actually done a part 1 to this, or a volume 1, where I went over like the introductory analog horrors. And a lot of you guys went into that comment section and were angry that some of your favorites didn't make the cut. And I'll just be real with you. I made that video because I was getting into analog horror, and I was not aware of their game. I did not realize just how many of these there were, and trust me, there are so many more that aren't even going to be in this video. But in this video, I wanted to, again, do a little volume 2 of an assortment of analog horrors that I think are gonna tickle your brain, okay? In this October spooky month, I think these are gonna tickle your brain, okay? Tickle your fancy, in other words, okay? If you're unaware what analog horrors are, the best way that I have found to describe it is, imagine I took early creepypastas, mixed that with found footage, and then made it a little bit more cryptic, and then every once in a while, you add some childhood nostalgia and weirdness, and boom, that's what you get. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. I know that's a weird sales pitch, but trust me, with what we're going to be covering in this video, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's what this is. But no more long-winded intro. I think I've done this intro like 4 times already, okay? We're Ethan on everything over here, and we're going to be covering analog horror today. October, spooky season. No more. Let's get into this. Dog nightmares. Okay. The best way that I've found is an introductory to this one, because this is a tough sell. I'm just gonna admit it. You remember those old funny videos, those old viral videos back in the day, back when if you wanted to make it viral on the internet, all you really needed was a cute dog and like slightly decent titling. That's all you really needed back in the day. Oh, how it has changed. But remember those videos where basically somebody would take like a big dog, like a greyhound, and they would put him in like a flannel, and then replace my head with the dog, and then they would just do like normal things around the house, like eat breakfast and work on a car, and then add some voiceover work after that. Yeah, those videos were weird, just looking back on it. Yeah, like, I don't know what it was about it. It was just a little bit uncanny to me. And clearly, the person who made this one felt the same. Now imagine I took that entity, and then I added some child abduction, a little bit of some skinwalker activities, and then on top of that, mix in some childhood traumatic drawings and VHS tapes. That's the best way I have found to describe it. And I say all that, and it sounds like it doesn't work, but it does. This one caught me by surprise. When I was covering it, I fully expected this was going to be a D tier. I'll be brutally honest with you. I'm going to have links to all of these in the description down below, like I did in part 1, just so these guys can get the recognition I believe they deserve. This one is weirdly good. No. I'm going to go over the stuff that I like, and then I'm going to go over the stuff that I don't like, and give you like the brief synopsis if you don't want to watch it. Essentially, we're taking the place of a person watching a VHS tape, going over old photos, old head drawings of I'm just going to say, a disturbed child. I'm sorry. The moment my child starts drawing pictures of a slightly demonic-looking dog man saying, that's my friend, I am punting that child to the moon. Okay? I hate when scary movies do that, because it gets to the point where, like, let's be real here. I don't know the demographic completely of who watches me. Off the top of my head, it's like 89% dudes, 11% women, which that surprises me, frankly. But if your child gives you a photo of a shadowy figure with a dog face and says, my friend Bobo, yeah, nah, I'm beating that child. Bro, what? Instantly I'm getting freaked out. But it works well in the storytelling of this, because this is a lonely, disturbed child. And mix into that the imagery from those old videos now being relabeled as like a scary, like almost like a found footage movie. Adding some pretty good special effects, if I'll be real with you, and something that used to be funny now made into an uncanny horror, a child abduction horror film. It works. It works. No. It's not going in A or S. I'm just going to spoil it right now, because to get in A or S, there has to be either an overwhelming plot that's going to be going through all of this, or we can go deeper into this. You can't really go into this really deep. You can go into the origin of the creature, but I don't see them doing that in a way that's going to be different from any other. Because, that's my only problem with this, but if you just wanted to watch a good analog horror, have a good little spooky one, and maybe you can even laugh at some of them, because I'll just admit it, some of the pictures that this little disturbed child is drawing are so dark it automatically just makes me go, where are your parents? Like, where are the parents in all of this? That's my immediate reaction to some of these. But as far as a ranking, I would say we're looking at probably a mid to a low B tier, that being a pretty good average going into this. It works. That's the best way that I can describe it. It works as a plot. It's a good, decent monster. And they do a lot with with a concept that shouldn't work, but it just does. That's the best way I have to describe it. Links to all of these are going to be in the description below, by the way. Give them some support. They deserve it. A lot of these are very good, and including this one, I would say is pretty good. Basswood County. Listen, when I was going into this, I'm going to give you my brutally honest opinions. I thought, okay, this is going to be a copy of the Mandela Catalog, which I covered in part 1. The Mandela Catalog is kind of like the Michael Jordan or the LeBron James of analog horror. It just became the GOAT. And when I looked at Basswood County, that's what I was thinking. However, if I had to give a good description of this, imagine you're living in like a rural county, okay? And then you have like these I'm trying to find the best way to describe it without comparing it to Mandela Catalog, but I think the best way to do it is imagine if there was a creature that wore the skin of its victims, and then they would just hunt down people, enter their homes, and then butcher the victims or the families that they went inside. Sounds brutal. It is brutal. I'll be real with you. Not for the faint of heart here. But it's done in a way that avoids, like, that schlocky horror. Like, you know what I'm talking about, where it just gets to the point where we're just like, and 53 people died in the small rural town. Okay, as a person who lives in a pretty, like, I don't want to say super rural, but like a fairly rural town, dog, if 53 people just immediately bit the dust, bro, National Guard is coming in right away, bro. 53 people, that's like a sizable amount of the demographic. Like, instantaneously just gets wiped out by a bunch of skinwalking Wendigo people. This thing also does something that, it reminds me of The Painter in a way of what The Painter could have been. If you guys remember, The Painter was like, I think it was the only D tier. Like, it was the only analog horror that I actually thought was just bad. Because it had a cool concept that it just immediately went into, like, that slocky, just brutal for the sake of being brutal. Listen, brother, I read Berserk, okay? I actually think from, like, a narrative point of view, a lot of the stuff that is just brutal in that story works to serve the narrative, and that's how I view it. Now, are there a few points in this where I think we're starting to go a little bit too far? Yes, and I will dock a point there. However, a lot of the brutality in this story isn't too much to the point where I just don't want to watch it, and the art that they use, they mix in art with, like, live action stuff, and it works. Like, it just does. Like, let me just say this. An important part about analog horror is you have to have a really good pilot. Your pilot has to carry hard, because that's what gets people. You need those viral clicks on here, okay? Attention spans are shrinking, boys. And this has probably one of the strongest starts I've ever seen in analog horror, bro. It is boom, 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 story beat, story beat, story beat, brutality. Okay, I'm in. And that, honestly, that brings it up there quite a bit, okay? Honestly, I would say a B+ going into an A-. I think that's a valid placement here. Like, it actually almost makes me want to push down Dog Nightmares just a tad. Maybe I'll do C+ for Dog Nightmares. Not a D tier, but I think because of how I'm looking at some of the stuff coming up, I'm going to have to be a tough judge here. I'm going to say C+, and then Basswood County, B to B+. I think that's valid. Give them all a check out in the description down below. Gemini Home Entertainment. This one definitely had most of the hate comments in the last video. Not hate comments, but more like, bro didn't cover Gemini Home Entertainment in an analog horror tier list. Bro's a casual. I didn't know we had casuals in this fan base already, and yes, I was. I didn't know what Gemini Home Entertainment was. I'll just be brutally honest with you. I was getting into it. Dang, is it good, bro. It's so good. And it actually predates a lot of the ones that ended up making it into like S tier off the top of my head. This started like 4 or 5 years ago, which is crazy. Like that was before the analog horror boom, which was like brought to light by like channels like I'd probably say like Wendigoon. Creepcast is definitely helping a lot with there. You have Immortal Marcus. You have a lot of people in that space that have kind of like brought analog horror to the mainstream by making it digestible for people. And I think those channels have done a great job, great service for this group of people on the internet. But Gemini Home Entertainment, bro, is an OG. And it works so well. It touches a portion of my heart in horror that I think needs to be touched on a bit more. And that is mimicking people. I love stories that mimic people, okay? And I understand it's gotten to the point where it's just become like the stereotypical thing to do. But Gemini, imagine this. Imagine, again, you're living in like a slightly rural town, okay? A lot of these take place in like rural towns because I think that's an effective place to tell a story. And a lot of the story is served to you in like these old like educational VHS videos from back like in the early 2000s. Yes, there was VHS in the early 2000s. I was there. And they're telling you about the nature. Like, oh, if you hear a cougar mating in the woods, don't go near. I don't know why that's something that's new. If you hear a grizzly bear in the woods, don't go near it. And then at the end of most of these videos, they're going to hit you with something of the wood crawler, which instantly tickles that part of my brain of like, go on. And then instantly, we're going from wood crawler, makes no noise in the woods, is one of the hardest creatures ever to track. And then we go from story beat to nature's mockery. First off, calling a creature nature's mockery goes unreasonably hard, bro. But instantly I'm in again. This is another one of those analog horrors where I think the reason it was able to tell the story that it's trying to tell, and it gets admittedly pretty out there, and that would be my only gripe with it, honestly. But it has such a banger opener, bro. Like, we go straight from wood crawlers that are undetectable, straight into nature's mockery, which is basically, it has a way of mimicking people. There's also like a psionic abilities where it has the ability to mentally, like, torture people, and on top of that can like take control of people's bodies. You have like people's bodies trying to learn how to function normally because it's trying to learn how to mimic people. You have like, okay, and another one that, trust me, this will be covered later on in the video. National parks need to get covered more in analog horror. Okay, y'all need to touch on that because there is so much stuff that you can cover in that small little demographic of the internet. Gemini Home Entertainment does touch on it, where you have disappearances in a local like camp where like they tell you don't be opening doors or you're gonna be going missing because we got the spider Cthulhu demons that like to take your body and then use them as for whatever means they want. You have a lot here. You have evil corporations. You have a Cthulhu level alien god. You have so much that they're playing with here, and it sounds like they're not going to be able to juggle it, and that's my only real gripe, is it does go so far out there, but by the time you get to that point of the analog horror, you're already so intrigued that you want answers to be found. I don't want to spoil too much. A lot of you guys probably already know about Gemini Home Entertainment. You can make a really good argument for S, but I don't want to give it S right away. I'm going to put it at a high A. I think Gemini Home Entertainment is a solid A. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me on that. A tier is very valid for Gemini. Woodlands National Park. This one might be one of my personal favorites because, as I said in the last one, national parks need to get covered more. They just do. The fact that we have something called 411 disappearances, like that's an actual thing that happens, where so many people, such a weird amount of people go missing in national parks to the point where they don't even bother finding you past a certain point, is something that I think just needs to be cut. It's like the makings of a story. And that is what Woodlands National Park goes into. I also love just how nonchalant this analog horror is. Like, it strikes me as just two bros making a horror series in their backyard. And it works so well to the point that I kind of, like, the slockiness of it works to its advantage, okay? You have everything from Wendigos, okay? Cave crawlers. No, cave critters. You have this other weird monster that's essentially like a shadow octopus that makes things staticky. Again, works really well. You have like a few government organizations that don't know how to deal with this thing, so they're kind of like silently feeding people to it in like 411s. That's the reason why they don't search for him, is because it's a secret like government ploy, which works so well in the plot to the point where I'm like, I'm really digging this. It also does something again that I think needs to be touched on more. Okay, GoPro footage. GoPro footage, as a dude who like grew up during like the early 2000s going in the 2010s, the amount of GoPro war footage that I was subjected to as a child, to the point where you're like, yo, this would make a fire scary movie. Because there's something about, like, yes, it's in the point of view of, like, an actual person fighting against something or someone, but the chaos of what you're seeing, where you don't actually see what they're firing at, you don't actually see what's going on. Like, I am waiting for somebody to repurpose old GoPro footage from either, like, police officers or, like, wars, and turn that into an analog horror in and of itself. And that's what this does. It has one really effective episode where you're kind of taking the place of, like a military national park serviceman, and they're, like, actively trying to hunt down, like, a creature that killed a bunch of campers because it crossed a line too far into, like, where normal people are. It works so well. I really like this one. A tier. A tier. I put it at the same level of Gemini Home Entertainment. It's probably one of my all-time favorites. I really enjoy this one. It works on so many levels. It's funny where it needs to be funny. Doesn't take itself too seriously, but the story is there to be covered. I'm going to put it in A-. I think that's valid. Monument Mythos. First off, let me just shout out Wendigoon's channel here, okay? Because I'll be real with you, bro. I barely understand what's going on. This is going to be one of those where I would actually take my opinion on this one with a grain of salt, because there is so much that's going on in the Monument Mythos and this analog horror that they've actually lost me, brought me back and lost me, and now I'm coming back to it that many times. Where do I even start with this one? Okay, the Washington Memorial is secretly a multi-dimensional tree that can transport you to a separate dimension. And a bunch of, like, 30 children, like, visiting the Washington Memorial, it got struck by lightning, and then it sent people to another dimension where Nixon didn't become president. Also, Nixon is a very big character in here, so if you want to get caught up on American lore real quick, this too. Also, Abraham Lincoln comes into play here, because people have to live inside the Lincoln Monument and make... I don't know. Also, the statue that's above the Lincoln Monument is actually like an Amazonian-possessed, like, blood... I don't even know what to call it. Metal blood golem that just decapitates people. It goes so crazy, but it works. No. I'm not going to say it works every time, but, like, there's a good... like, it pulls off. I have no clue how it does it. But it pulls off, like, a presidential drama actually decently well, because now you're dealing with, like, there's an election going on. Hopefully that doesn't get me flagged. There's, like, a little election going on with one person who's, like, actually super evil, and he's there's so much. You have, like, other dimensional, the multiversal entities. There's a president that's living on the moon. You also have pyramids on Mars. There is so much that they go through that it sounds like it falls flat on its face, but it goes so wild with it that I actually I enjoy it. However, if I'm recommending analog horror to my friends, Monument Mythos is one of, like, the last things I'm gonna recommend to you because of how crazy it gets. Dog, I needed a Wendigoon video to fully understand what was going on, because I was so confused by, like, the 5th video. However, once you understand it, it works really well. I'm gonna put this at a B tier. I think B tier is perfectly valid for this one. It's not that it's bad, it's just really, really hard to follow at times. Boisvert. Interesting. I'm going to say this right now. It is definitely not one of those that I would recommend to somebody, like, getting into this genre, because it is not audience friendly. It's not that it's not audience friendly. Like, again, I don't want to say non-audience friendly, because that sounds bad. Not casual friendly. It goes so abstract at times that it's like, okay, what's going on? but it's like an art piece, bro. Like it's one of those where you're kind of like, I don't know what you're trying to say here, but it looks so cool. Also, some of the music goes weirdly hard. I'm just gonna say, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a video where it's a straight up horror music video, okay? And like the imagery is meant to scare you, but the beat goes so hard to the point where I'm listening to it and I'm like, yo. Oh, like that was my reaction to one of these videos. If I had to give you like a quick story on it, there's like a demonic monster that is like super lonely, and a lot of like the stuff that they're covering on here is like the effects of being uber lonely. And I can relate to this to a certain point because I think we've all been like incredibly lonely for like a 3-month period of our life. And it is weird how like if you're not around people for a certain amount of time, you almost start to other yourself out of people. Like you think, oh, I'm doing well because I'm alone, so that makes me different than them. And you almost, like your brain is actively coping about you not having friends. So it treats itself as something other than you're lonely. It almost treats it as like, oh, well, the reason that I don't have friends is because I'm better. Like, no, bro, you're just socially awkward. Like, I'm just going to be real with you. And I can relate to this. I'll just be real with you, man. Like, after I graduated from high school, I don't think I've spoken to a single person that I went to high school with. It's not that I don't like them, but like there's nobody that I clicked with. And then I got like straight into martial arts straight out of high school, and then I actually found out, oh, it's not that I'm different. I'm just socially awkward. Like that was my realization in my early adult life. Like when I was 19 years old, I figured out, oh, I'm socially awkward. How did that happen? Like, that was my realization coming out of this. And I'm going to wrap this back to Boisvert. That's a lot of the story that it's trying to tell you. Like, there is a menacing, almost like, loneliness. Like, the effects of loneliness on your psyche that it's trying to implicate to you. You can even be around people and be lonely in your own mind. That's at least my takeaway from it. Maybe that's not going to be everyone's takeaway. However, because it's just so hard to recommend to people as their first analog horror, I'm going to put it at C. It's not bad. It's not bad. I need to keep on saying it. It's not that it's bad. It's just one of those where you have to be a fan of the abstract to like it. And I think abstract analog horrors, the more abstract they are, the tougher it is to recommend to people. Because, look, I'll be real. If I showed some of my friends, like, Boisvert, and it was like, oh, yeah, this is what Ethan watches, they'd be like, oh, yeah, bro, Ethan's a fucking weirdo, dog. Like, I don't be needing any more of those allegations, man. Okay? Like, I already cover too many things, okay? Like, we're going too far. I'll give you something like Gemini Home Entertainment or Woodlands National Park, and you'll be like, oh, this is kind of heat. That's how I feel about this. Link's going to be in the description if you think that you would like it. The Oldest View. I didn't want to cover this one in the last video because it was still relatively new, and on top of that, I was already glazing Kane Pixels too much. Dude, he's one of the goats, okay? He is one of the goats at this point. He made the Backrooms analog horror, and on top of that, made this. And The Oldest View, it has one... Okay, not one. It has one true episode, but it has like a prologue, and then it has one that come out. Okay, the one episode that you guys have probably seen is where it's a guy traveling through like this national park, okay? He goes up to this hill where there's a tree on the hill to take pictures. And then he realizes that there's a little hole in the hill. And he travels down it, and there's a staircase that is so horrifyingly long that I'll just be real with you, okay? The most unbelievable part about this entire analog horror wasn't the monster that lived in the underground mall. It was the fact that somebody saw an endless staircase and was like, you know what, bro? I actually want to go down it, okay? And just a fun fact, that entire staircase was fake. Literally everything that you're seeing in that video is CGI. Dude, like, if I had to pick somebody to be our representative of analog horror, it would be this guy. Insane. Okay? The monster, it is a forgotten, I don't want to get too abstract with it because there is a lot to this story where it works as just a normal scary story. But if you get more into the details of it, it's like, wow. Wow, that's what it was? I don't want to spoil too much because I think that kind of ruins the fun of it. But imagine you see an almost endless staircase underground by a tree. You walk down it and you go into a fully built, like, super mega mall. And then there's this scary monster that's chasing you around. And you're like, bro, what is this? Like, it just works. But it worked. Like, S tier. It is an actual S tier. The only other one that I would put up there would be like Gemini Home Entertainment, but Oldest View is so good. I am so excited to see where it goes. The only bad part about King Pixels, okay, the only bad part that I found is he spends so long on projects that, like, you think an analog horror ended. No, he's just cooking. He also has another one that he's working on. I don't know what the name it is off the top of my head, but I know he's working on another project, and I'm so hyped. I'm hyped. Oldest View S tier, though. I was a huge fan of it. The Sonic tapes. Okay, let me go over the nice stuff first, okay? The animations are really good, okay? And they make me laugh. There is one, I try not to spoil these, but Sonic is the major entity that we're fighting against in the story, okay? That's all I have to say. It's too out there for me. I enjoyed it because some of the animations are so funny. Like, an obvious demonic Sonic creature absolutely just bouncing the shit out of one of these, like, creatures in the Sonic video game. And then, like, one of the other, like, video game creatures, as this dude is just ground and pounding his buddy into a paste, he's like, you're just hearing, boo, boo. Like, it's so bad at times. But the animation is so good. Like, the animator of the Sonic tapes is, dude, you're really good. However, like, I'm judging it compared to these other ones, but it's in, like, a genre of analog horror where it goes so nostalgic that it's meant to be schlocky. But it, like, I have to put it, I have to put it in D tier, not because it's bad, but I need something to be in D tier for this video. But I actually recommend that you watch at least, like, 2 episodes of this, because the animation is impressive, the imagery is scary, but at the end of the day, the entity is Sonic. Like, it's D tier, but it's a dumb fun D tier. I dig it. I do dig it. The Walten Files. Okay, now imagine Five Nights at Freddy's, but they couldn't get the Five Nights at Freddy's copyright, so they made their own analog horror. That is 100% what I feel. Which, here's the weird part. There already is a Five Nights at Freddy's analog horror, so I don't even know how that held up. But it definitely is supposed to be a Five Nights at Freddy's type of scary story. And that's the best way that I can describe it. Like, it's one of those where you're dealing with, like, a corporation. They make robots to entertain children. You're dealing with, like, evil robots or, like, ghost possession of the robots. There's a dude. Like, it's essentially the story of Five Nights at Freddy's, but it's as an analog horror. That is the best way that I can describe it, and I think that's enough to sell people on it. Again, like, I know this seems like a very short description of it, but, like, that's really, I say that's it. Like, it's bad, but it's good. Like, the more I describe it, the more I'm gonna spoil it for you. Okay, well, let me say some other good stuff. Okay, the imagery is spooky. It makes you laugh of how scary it is sometimes. Like, the first video is, like, the introductory video where, like, the security guard comes in, and then these monsters start singing, and then when they get to, like, the crescendo of the song, with, like, the cow goes moo, and then they go to, like, the pig, and there's just a pig squealing for its life throughout the entire song, to the point where if you're a child in this, you're like, I want to go home. Like, that's how I feel about it. I'm going to say bottom of B. It's not better than Monument Mythos. Monument Mythos gets peak near the end of it. But it's definitely above that C tier range. And I'm interested to see where it goes. It's good. It's good. I was a fan of this one, okay? And that is Volume 2 of the Analog Horror tier list. Just in time for October, the spooky season. Hopefully I gave you something that you would like to watch. Looking at it right now, I think I actually ranked these really good. My top 3, definitely. are the oldest view, because it's really one episode that's just peak. You have Gemini Home Entertainment, which probably is like an OG of the saga. If you've already watched Mandela Catalog, you need to watch Gemini. And Woodlands National Park, because I really think national parks are just scary with how many people go missing, and we just don't know why. I like it. It's fun. It's funny for the sake of, don't be taking it too serious, but the story and the monster designs are good. Those are definitely my top 3, but definitely give all of these a check out if you're interested in this genre. And with all that out of the way, please consider a like, a comment, subscribe, share this with a friend that you think would enjoy this content. We cover all types of stuff on this channel. We're called Ethan on Everything for a reason. Yeah, no, we got some stuff to get covered this month, okay? That not all of them are scary. We got some fun stuff to be covered here. But with all that out of the way, we're trying to get to 50K by the end of the year. Do me a favor, subscribe if you haven't already. 62% of you are unsubscribed. But at the end of the day, I'm blessed to just do this for a living. But with all that, let me just say, have a great day, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Adios, guys.